Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of the Live, Train, Perform podcast. I'm your host, Shaun Kober, and joining me today is Elise Richmond, who is an athlete, a coach, and an adventurer. She's been working in the fitness industry since 2009 as a personal trainer, which has taken her all around the world and provided the opportunity for her to go on her own athletic endeavours. And she's dabbled in bodybuilding, is a 2 times CrossFit Regionals Athlete, and has crossed Mongolia's Gobi desert on foot, as well as kayaked Australia's largest river, and has just returned from cycling across Australia. In an attempt to simplify life as much as possible, she now lives in Tasmania with her husband and 10 chickens. Elise, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. You are a fascinating person. You and Luke are amazing people, and you guys intrigue me with the lifestyle that you've decided to live. And there's many questions that I want to dive into in today's episode. But the first one I want to talk about is I'm an ambassador for Swiss 8, which is a proactive mental health program designed for people to schedule in and structure the most important things in their life. And the Swiss 8 pillars of health and wellness are sleep, nutrition, time management, discipline, fitness, personal growth, mindfulness, and minimalism. For you, is there one of those that stands out for you that you are prioritizing right now in your life? And has there been other times in your life when maybe a different one of those pillars becomes more of a precedence?
Yeah, I think it's actually, I don't know if they're in any particular order, but the last one, minimalism, really stands out for me at this current point in my life, and probably for the last couple of years. And I think you can sort of apply that minimalistic theme to all the other ones as well, because I think a lot of time with our sleep, with our nutrition, with our training, with all those things, we really just overcomplicate them. And I think a lot of us just need to take a step back with all those things and go back to the basics and cover the basics before we get wrapped up in how many reps we're meant to be doing and all those kind of things. It's like, okay, mate, well, how often are you getting to the gym? So that minimalistic side definitely jumps out for me, and just simplifying life and everything involved in it.
I love that. Now, we spoke about it in the intro. You're down in Tasmania at the moment, and I know where you guys are. I used to live in Tasmania, and you're in a beautiful part of the world. And you've got a block of land, you've got a place there, and I've seen your social media posts. I've been following what you guys are doing, and you guys have literally minimized your life to the bare essentials. Can you talk to me about that?
Yeah, I think the simplifying life really kind of kicked off from our move to Thailand, and we lived in a 5x5 bungalow with nothing. The mosquitoes got in every night. It was super basic. We ate the same thing every day. And that kind of kicked off our, what do we really need to be happy and enjoy life? And it's not very much. And we kind of realized that quite quickly over in Thailand, and have just really been chasing less ever since. We came down to Tasmania on a base jumping trip and just fell in love with it, and nowhere else had really felt like home before. I mean, Thailand was great and all these other places, Sydney, all those things, but both of us just felt at home immediately. And we were literally on the internet the next day let's look for properties, because we just wanted space and nature. And it had all our amazing climbing and hiking and all those things that we love down here. So it was a really easy decision to sort of take the plunge and go into adulthood and buy some land.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's something I want to talk about there, because that's something that I see you and Luke are very similar. You are both go-getters. You're both action takers. Yes, you put some thought into doing things that you want to do, but you don't need to have all the answers. You just figure shit out as you go. And I love that about you guys. I love that you just made the decision to move down there and figure it out along the way. So what was there a catalyst for moving to Tasmania from Thailand?
Not really. I think, like you just said, we kind of just wing a lot of stuff, but there's kind of a reason behind it, I guess. I mean, opportunities tend to present themselves when you put yourself in situations that are different. And we kind of both realized that quite quickly from moving to Thailand. We're in the Sydney rat race with a gym and all those kind of things before we moved to Thailand. And we were being presented every single day with the same opportunities. So we were meeting the same people, we were in the same environments, we were having the same conversations. And so nothing new was ever really happening. And then as soon as we moved to Thailand, all of a sudden we had access to these people from all over the world and all these different locations, and all of a sudden, all these different opportunities started presenting themselves. And one of them being, like, Luke was asked to row across the Atlantic Ocean. If we hadn't have shifted everything in our life over to Thailand, he wouldn't have been presented with that opportunity. And then I was presented with access to be able to train as hard as I liked. And I'd never had that before because I was working 9 to 5 or even longer. So all of a sudden, all these opportunities presented themselves, and it wasn't a coincidence. We actually just shifted everything. We shifted our environment and our conversations and the people that we're in front of. So all this stuff started coming up and arising, and then we're like, oh, okay, there's something to this. So then you just sort of start always looking for different circumstances and different environments and different conversations so you can get presented with different opportunities. And then it's just this big snowball effect where it seems like all these things are coming your way, but you've actually just stepped out of your zone, and different things have come to you because of that. So I have no idea what your original question was, but yeah, but that's yeah. And then that's another thing. And then we moved into like rock climbing and all those kind of things, and started looking around like, oh, where could we go to rock climb? And then Tasmania pops up, and we find ourselves down here. And then all of a sudden, we're buying land down here and figuring it out.
Yeah. Now there's something that came up for me that I am going to kind of tie everything back in together. And that was, you guys said that you were looking for circumstances, you were looking for opportunities. And to me, good luck is the meeting of preparation and opportunity. You need to put yourself in those situations to be able to take advantage of those opportunities when they come up. And you and Luke and myself pretty much did the old switcheroo. I went from being in Tasmania over to Thailand to live the life that I wanted, and you guys went the other way to Tasmania from Thailand. Now, there's something that kind of piqued my interest before when you said we were putting ourselves in these situations, and, there was always kind of something behind it. There was always a reason behind it. So I want to tie that into what your underlying values are, because I'm sure you and Luke have spoken about, you've spoken about minimalism and trying to make life as simple as possible, but also living a life of meaning. Can you talk to me about what your underlying values are and those reasons why, you basically have made these decisions to put yourself in different circumstances and surround yourself with different people and put yourself into these different environments?
Yeah. I mean, Luke goes by the mantra, one life, one chance. And that has definitely rubbed off on me. My mantra is simplify life. So we've definitely, I think, combined those two really seamlessly. And for me, it's all about making stories and making memories. And Luke actually asked me, he's like, what's your purpose? Just in a very dramatic voice the other day. It's like, we was just sitting on the couch doing nothing. He's like, what's your purpose? I was like, I don't know. No one's really asked me that. And I kind of walked away, made a cup of tea. I was like, my purpose is just to have as much fun and experience as much joy and as much pleasure as possible. That is my purpose. And so for me, that means going out and experiencing things. And whether I like them, whether I don't like them, whether I've had the time of my life or not, at least I've experienced these things, and then I can, grab them, hold them, and they are my memories and they are my stories. And I really don't think we are anything without our stories. The scariest thing for me is getting old and losing my memory, losing
Mm.
my experiences and the people that I've met and the places that I've seen. And I can't imagine there'd be many people that wouldn't fear that. I'd much rather my body fall apart than my mind when I do get old. So yeah, for me, it's just creating stories and having those experiences in my pocket.
Yeah, speaking of, you've got some pretty incredible stories and experiences, and you've just got back from basically trying to cycle across Australia. You went from Darwin, you're trying to go back home, right? Trying to
Yeah.
cycle all the way back home, but then you guys had to call it because the Victorian border was closed. Is that correct?
Yeah, so originally we were going to go right through the centre of Australia and then along the bottom through the Great Ocean Roads and then catch the ferry across and then ride through Tasmania to the bottom where we are. That was the original plan. It was a very loose plan, can we just say. This was a very last minute adventure just because of everything, all our overseas trips and general stuff being shut down because of COVID. So we kind of bought some mountain bikes like a month before we left, and we're just figuring it all out. And so that was the loose plan. It ended up being Darwin to Port Augusta, which is essentially right through the middle, the whole section of it, top to bottom. So that was pretty awesome within itself.
Yeah, amazing. How many kilometers did that end up being? Like 3,500 or something like that?
I think it was just under. I think it was 2,800 in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about that ride. So you guys are just go-getters, action takers. Pretty much did it on a month's notice, figuring it out as you went. So I'm assuming you didn't really do any training for that.
We had about 3 training rides. I think the most we cycled on a training trip was about 39 or 40 kilometers. And this is around Tassie, and Tassie is hills central. So that was pretty brutal. And we only did a one-day kind of thing. We never did a back-to-back kind of practice ride. Kind of got the gist of it, figured out the gears, asked a lot of questions at the bike shop, and sort of put it out to our very limited biking network. Just like, what do we need? And I mean, the great thing is there's forums for all this stuff now, so you can kind of figure it out. But yeah, we had a couple of weeks in Queensland before it, and then flew straight to Darwin, put the bikes together, and hit the road.
What was the most mentally and physically demanding thing of that trip? How long did you go for? And what was the humidity like?
Oh, man. When you hit Darwin, I mean, we're coming from Tassie, so it was Tassie winter, 5 degrees. And then we hit Darwin. It was like 40 degrees the first time. So we had a bit of time in Darwin just to sort of acclimatise. And then we hit the road. We did about 75 kilometres on day 1, and my ass was ruined. It was absolutely shot. So we had the bike pants. Luke actually bought a different bike seat, a bit squishier. And yeah, so those first few days were just super painful on your bum. And of all the people we asked, no one was like, watch out for the bum. No one. So that was...
I'm pretty sure I saw a social media post of your legs like...
Oh, yeah.
Blisters.
I got a heat rash. So it wasn't sunburn because I was properly lathered and stuff. It was just this mad heat rash. And then we both had a tent each. So we had a one-man tent that we're sleeping in each night, and packed down to our front wheel, which was really cool. But those first few days in the tent were just scorching. And we were trying to navigate. The start of it was really trafficky coming out of Darwin, so we're trying to navigate that as well. But then eventually we got up to about, I think our biggest day on the bike was about 165 kilometers
Wow.
in the day. So that was courtesy of a tailwind. And the most physically painful on a bike is when you have a headwind and everything gets cut in half. So you literally, if you were going to have a 150 kilometer day, you're going to have a 75 kilometer day. So that's pretty challenging on the mind. Yes, it's hard physically, but you can stop, you can have a rest. There was no time frame. So yeah, definitely the headwinds was the hardest thing to navigate.
Yeah, you guys seem to throw yourself into these positions where you take on challenging adventures. And I love that, because I think in this day and age that we live in, people live in perpetual comfort where they're not really, putting themselves out of their comfort zone, where, there's no growth there. You don't need to build resilience. And if you don't test yourself, and if you don't put yourself in these uncomfortable situations every now and again, then you lose the ability to, maintain mental and physical resilience. You also rode down the Murray River, was it?
Yeah. So Australia's longest river, it was 2,200 kilometers long. And again, same sort of situation. We got the kayaks about a month before, did a couple of training trips, and you've got to understand that, like, the Murray River is pretty chill. There's no rapids. There's no, it's sandy banks a lot of the time, until you get to the wider section. It's really quite calm, and you're going with the flow. So it was a pretty chill one, and we had Luke's dad there with us as well in a fishing tinny. And there's a grocery store every 3 to 6 days, so you've got fruitcake and coffee, and
so you just decided to row 2,200 kilometers for leisure.
Yeah. But that's the beauty of having a base level of fitness as well, is what you're capable of, and okay, well, this is going to be X amount of time in a kayak every day, and well, how am I going to be able to manage that? Well, I know I can do that, and you can just jump straight into it. There's no off season for fitness. Like you just stay at a level of fitness where if someone goes to you, hey mate, do you want to go and kayak the Murray River? You could go, yeah, I can. Let's go. And that's kind of the basis behind, well, my fitness at least, is if someone tomorrow invited me to go and do something epic, I can say yes.
Yeah, that is brilliant. That is literally my philosophy on fitness as well. And that's something that I talk about all the time is, build a solid foundation. You should be strong enough, fast enough, explosive enough, have good enough endurance, good aerobic capacity, mental resilience, physical resilience, all of those mental and physical attributes, so that you can literally live the life that you want without being restricted by anything. So I love that definition of fitness. That's amazing. Let's talk about your fitness journey for a moment, because you're a coach. I know that you worked in Thailand. For people listening at home, if you've never been to Soi Thait in Thailand, it's a road that's probably 1.5 to 2 kilometers long, and there's probably about 10 different gyms on the road. And Tiger Muay Thai is the biggest gym there. Then you've got Unit 27. Phuket Top Team, there's Dragon Muay Thai. There's a heap of little Muay Thai places along the street as well. And the whole road is dedicated towards health and fitness, basically. And it's such an amazing place. And I came for the first time in 2013 when I was traveling through Southeast Asia. I'd been out of the army for about a year. I was traveling with my ex-girlfriend at the time. And the first time I rolled into Soi Thait, I was there for a week, and I was like, this place is amazing. I'd love to come back here and live and train here one day. And 7 years later, was that 4 years later, that ended up happening, and I moved back to Thailand. But everyone goes to the street for different reasons, and I know people that have gone there to, kick an addiction and turn their life around, or lose a heap of weight, or they've had, a heart attack or something like that. It was a catalyst for them, making some massive changes in their life. And it's it's an amazing place, and it draws a heap of amazing people from different backgrounds and different stories trying to, better themselves. So can you talk to me about your or how you ended up in Soi Taid and your coaching experience and life experience on the street?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, Luke and I, so he was my boyfriend at the time. He was running a CrossFit gym in Sydney and I was working for him. And it kind of just got to a point where we were just working so much and we just had a conversation. I was like, when was the last time you were happy? Because you're not happy right now. And he said, when I was in Thailand. And as you just mentioned, he'd gone there originally to kick an addiction, and then became a coach there. And then we were like, oh, okay, well, how can we get over to Thailand? How can we make this happen? And we ended up just selling everything and moving over to Thailand. And I actually arrived there and I didn't have a job. Luke had a job at Unit 27. So I was just going to live like the chill life and just train. And then eventually I got offered a job from Unit, which was cool. I actually got offered a job as a CrossFit coach and I'd never done CrossFit before. So I quickly had to figure out this CrossFit thing. And then I jumped straight into that. And it was a very relaxed schedule, which was really cool, which meant it gave me the opportunity to train myself a lot more. And I eventually fell in love with CrossFit and moved towards the CrossFit sort of scene. But it was really cool. I mean, for a coach, often you get very trapped in the humdrum. If you're in a sort of city gym, which I was back in Sydney, you're getting people really early in the morning before they start a 12-hour shift at work or really late in the evening, and everyone's stressed to the eyeballs and they just feel like they should go to the gym. And then you get to this place in Thailand and people have a couple of months to train and just chill and relax and everyone's happy and the sun's out and it's just a really enjoyable place to be. So I understand why people keep going back there. As a coach though, we stayed there for a couple of years. So we did see the same people come back again and again and again. Which is great because we made great friends with them. But also a lot of the time you're seeing them not progress, but regress sometimes, which is really hard to see because you've just not seen them for a year and all of a sudden they come back and you're like, oh my God, what's happened? So that was something that's really stood out to me over there and made me sort of realize I not only have to try and look after these people here, I need to make sure that when they leave, they understand what's going on and why they're doing what they're doing and what's happening in their home environment that's leading them to not make progress and often regress.
Yeah, that's a great observation. That's something that I've noticed as well. Like you said, a lot of people do come to Thailand to try and change their life. And here's the thing that I've put together is that when people are in Thailand for a month, 2 months, 3 months, etc., they're not in that same environment that they're in back home. So it's much easier for them to stick to a scheduled training program. And it's much easier for them to, eat healthy food when everything on the street is relatively healthy, and it's difficult to, get shitty foods. And they're surrounded by like-minded people that, are there for very different reasons, but also very similar reasons. And when they're in that environment, it's easy for them to put one foot in front of the other. But as you stated, once they go home, they go back into their old environment. They're hanging around with the same people. They're going back into the same job. They've got the same stresses, which they don't have in Thailand, and it's very easy to fall back into those old patterns with that environment. So I think it's very important to coach people into identifying and bringing their awareness to different aspects of, everything that happens in life. Again, going back to those 8 pillars of health and wellness with the Swiss 8 model, looking at each one of those pillars and prioritizing which is going to be the most important for you. And there was something you said then as well that tied that in together. And you spoke about minimalism again, where you basically just packed up your house in Sydney and moved over to Thailand. And then you basically did the same thing, packed up in Thailand and moved down to Tasmania. Can you talk to me about that? Because it takes a particular mindset to be able to do that, because for most people, that's really fucking scary. Most people, that is their identity, where they live, who they hang out with, what they do for work. That's their identity. And when they pack up and move to a new place, that's frightening. And so many people cannot do that. But you've done that multiple times in your life. I've done that multiple times in your life. Like, can you talk to me about that process and how you come to these decisions?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been, like you were saying, that identity crisis thing is a really real thing for people. And it's definitely been a process for me to overcome. You start to get wrapped up in, I am Elise and I'm the CrossFit athlete. And if I'm not doing CrossFit, no one knows who I am and no one cares. And I think it was actually in Thailand when we started getting into climbing. I was training for the regionals. So in 2016, it was my first regionals. I was CrossFit everything, like training twice a day, just absorbed in CrossFit. And Luke's like, look, we need to go and get you out of CrossFit mind. So let's go climbing and just go over to Tonsai and just relax for a weekend. And I was like super anxious. I'm like, no, I've only got a few weeks. I've got a CrossFit. Anyway, we went over with a couple of friends, and this one girl that we climb with, epic climber, beautiful girl. She just goes to me. She's like, oh, Elise, how's all that fit cross stuff going? Just trying to be really interested and not meaning anything by it. And that was my moment for me where I was just like, nobody cares. Just stop getting so wrapped up in your bubble. And it was literally a pivot point where I was like, I'm Elise. I do CrossFit, but I am not CrossFit. And so I've kind of just tried to apply that to everything moving forward. I'm just me. Whatever I do, that's my identity, whatever it is. If it changes on a daily basis, then I'm okay with that now. And I don't feel like I need to continue with an identity or a passion or a thing that is no longer serving me a purpose. So, I could have kept pushing in bodybuilding because I wanted to be a pro at the time, but it stopped serving me. And if I kept pushing, I would have made myself very, very sick and very, very sad. So I shifted, and then I went into CrossFit. But then if I kept pushing at CrossFit when it no longer served me, then again, I'm just giving up on what I really want to do in my life, which is, I don't know, whatever, just to pursue a passion because I think everyone else thinks I should be doing CrossFit. It just is ridiculous. So I have definitely let go of identity crisis stuff, which, like I said, takes a few years, or took me a few years. But I'm so much happier for it. I'm so much healthier for it because I just navigate around it now.
Yeah. I want to talk about a couple of those pivotal moments because you did say that you were in the bodybuilding realm, and I saw you post something. I was talking to you off air before, and I went onto your social media. I love your social media platforms, by the way. You post amazing content. But you posted something about a bodybuilding competition. There was a photo of you, like with makeup on, and all ready to rock up on stage. And you spoke about that not serving you, and you spoke about that not being a place that you were particularly happy, and you realized that and you were aware of that, and then you started making steps to push away from that. Can you speak about that post in particular and where you're at that stage in your life, and how you became aware that it was not serving you and you needed to put some processes in place to step away from that person that you were identifying with at that point in your life?
Yeah, bodybuilding was a really strange time for me. I think I definitely moved towards it because the people in my circles were bodybuilding. And particularly as a coach, I felt the need to um, sort of wear my business card on my body. And I definitely thought that I needed to be shredded to have clients um, and yeah, and I just went down that path and I don't regret it at all, but I wasn't healed from an eating disorder from a few years before. So it definitely brought up body image issues and eating disorder issues. And I tried to ignore them just because I wanted to be a pro. And I thought, this is what I need to do to be a pro. So I did two separate competitions and I did really well in them and I looked great and like I got really shredded and all that kind of stuff. But I realized that the people and the space that bodybuilding involves was just not me. And I was forcing myself into this hole because I felt that this is what I needed to be and this is what people thought I should be. So yeah, it was making me really sick and it was forcing me to be around people that I didn't connect with. And I was like, yeah, I just don't want to talk about food all the time. And I don't want to talk about training all the time. And I don't want to carry my food around with me. And the reality is that that's what you do. And yeah, and there was definitely a lot of unhealthy relationships within that space as well, which I needed to move away from. So it it sometimes just gets to a point where you have to choose between health and, you know, being shredded, which are different things. So yeah.
What was the biggest lessons you took from that period?
Uh, I guess that within itself is health and looking fit don't necessarily come as a package. So that was really a turning point for me to understand health and what it encompasses and how to be healthy rather than just how to be. And that includes your mind as well as your body rather than just how to look fit.
Yeah, I think that's a great point is for some reason in Western society, we associate health with how we look. And of course, you know, being aesthetically pleasing, I guess, or, you know, not carrying too much body fat or whatever is a sign of health. Okay. But there is too much of an extreme. And when you're going to that extreme where you're looking to be, you know, cover model lean or bodybuilder lean all year round, like the discipline it requires to get to that point and the restriction it requires to get to that point, it's, you know, it's, yeah, it may be worth something to push towards once or twice in your life just to experience it. But in my opinion, it's definitely not sustainable. It's not somewhere you want to stay all year round. Like, you know, it fucks up your hormones, it messes up your sleep, it makes you an irritable person to be around, and, you know, it's just not enjoyable for anyone. Let's talk about the transition from that bodybuilding phase into more of the CrossFit phase, because it seems like you went from throwing yourself into the bodybuilding, which obviously brought up some, you know, previous food relationship issues. Was stepping away from that scene and pushing towards CrossFit a means to try and move away from that scene and, you know, allow yourself to get into a healthier space?
Yeah, I actually segued into powerlifting after bodybuilding. And that was just through a manager that I had at the gym. He was like, look, if you want to do something different, let's try powerlifting. And I was like, yeah, cool. And really enjoyed it, did a few competitions and hadn't trained to be strong ever before. So that was a really cool thing because I realized my potential. I was like, oh, actually, I am strong. I can sort of stand up with some of the best and do something here. So that was really cool. And then powerlifting just got boring because I was sick of doing the same 3 lifts over and over. And then at that time,
can we pause there for a moment?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an important point to note for people listening back home is that bodybuilding, aesthetics is, it's very subjective. It's a never-ending, it's a never-ending finish line. So if you're constantly looking to get leaner and constantly looking to put on more muscle and constantly looking to get more jacked and blah, 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 like that finish line just never moves. And it's, as a competitor, you're being judged by someone else. So, it's very subjective. Whereas when you move towards powerlifting, it's objective. 200 kilos is fucking 200 kilos.
That's it.
Right? Like you either pick it up or you don't, so did that, kind of allow you to build a healthier relationship with what your body was capable of doing?
Yeah, definitely. I think after my last bodybuilding competition, you could email the judges for feedback. I was like, yep, cool, because I wanted to keep going with it. And I emailed them and they sort of said, look, your waist is too thick, you're blah, 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 you're this, you're that, you need to change this. And I kind of read that email and I was in a really pretty shitty place at this point in time. I'd already put back on all my weight and blah, blah, blah. And I just kind of read it. I was like, well, my waist isn't getting any smaller. Like, that's my rib cage. I don't know how I'm going to adjust this. And then I kind of looked at the judging panel as well. And I'm like, these people are all old, has been, like, I don't know these people. I don't care about these people. So why do I care what they think? Because anyone else would be like, oh my God, you look amazing. This is so good. But now all of a sudden I just got to the leanest I'd ever got and the 6-pack and all that. And I was still picking myself apart. And in my head, I was just like, this is so not good. And I knew it. And I was in this sort of angel devil kind of chat with myself. And so then moving into powerlifting and then having someone stand next to me and go, hey, you're good at this. This is up your alley and you could do well here. I was like, I felt that as well. And I felt like, hey, this is definitely where I need to go. And like you said, it's objective and it stops you. I hated the thought of competing against other women in bodybuilding because it was about looks. I'm like, we compete against each other every single day on the street. Like, we don't need to jump on a stage and do it. And moving away into the powerlifting world and getting to do a couple of competitions in powerlifting, everyone was so supportive because you know what your PB is. You know what the girl next to you's PB is. So if it's way higher, you're just like, well, look, I'm just trying to beat my own PB. And if I do, that is the best day. And everyone's celebrating everyone else. And it's just a different atmosphere and it's fun and it's supportive and there's no sort of behind the scenes like backstabby kind of stuff, which I really loved and I definitely took on board and then moved into CrossFit, which is obviously like another objective thing. You're either the fastest or you're not.
Let's talk about that transition. So you went from bodybuilding, which you did quite well at, but it also brought up basically some poor relationship with food and, hanging out in maybe an environment that you didn't want to be in. Transitioning into powerlifting, which you did quite well at and had a good, healthy change of mindset where you started focusing on more of what your body could start doing. But then you got bored with that, so transitioned in towards CrossFit. So then you went on to compete twice regionally. For those who haven't been following me for that long, I competed in a CrossFit competition a couple of years ago as part of a team, and Elise was one of my teammates. And that team was absolutely jacked.
And we won.
beast beast. I know I'm not a CrossFitter. I am a CrossFit coach, but I don't really do CrossFit. And that was the second team CrossFit competition I'd competed in, and had the opportunity to compete with Elise and Dave Driscoll and Joy Summers, and dominated that competition. So I've seen what you're capable of. But let's talk about what CrossFit did for you, both mentally and physically, as an athlete, going from being a bodybuilder to a powerlifter to a CrossFit athlete.
Yeah, CrossFit really combined all my loves, I guess. So it has a more gymnastics element to it. And I did a lot of dancing all throughout my childhood. So sort of getting to combine that stuff with the strength, and it was just a really beautiful stew of athleticism for me. And it really allowed me, I think powerlifting, because there was a weight class as well. And I was sort of in between weight classes. So I did need to diet down into a weight class. And that for me was hard because I was still dealing with my food relationship and my eating issues. So I remember dieting down for my last powerlifting competition and experiencing some disordered eating and thinking, oh no, I've worked so hard to try to get over this. I don't want to be here anymore. So CrossFit not having weight classes or anything that you have to look like or anything like that, I think it was just the perfect poison for me at the time. And of course, we were in Thailand and I was coaching CrossFit, so it just made a lot of sense.
Are you still doing CrossFit these days, or have you moved away from that modality of training?
Look, I haven't touched the high intensity CrossFit stuff since regionals in 2018. I ticked my CrossFit box with, except for the competition with you, but I ticked my CrossFit box really with getting back to regionals, and since that I haven't really wanted to, and I haven't needed to. So now I do a lot of, it's more like a combination of all of them. Bodybuilding, powerlifting, CrossFit, like I've just kind of combined them all together, and I just have fun with it, and I just do what I feel like doing on the day. And if we prefer to go for a hike or a climb or whatever, I do. And then if we're leading into an adventure, I'll just get a little bit more specific into whatever that adventure may be.
Yeah, cool. I love that answer. Let's talk about the type of training that you're doing now, because I know that you're a neurophysics practitioner under Ken Ware.
Yep.
Yeah, so can you talk to me about that qualification and what you're doing? I saw a post of you squatting, and I've seen Luke doing this over the last couple of years, of you guys squatting and moving and things like that with your eyes closed. And I'm an applied movement neurology level 1 practitioner, and I assume it's kind of along those same paths where we're looking at basically everything being driven by the brain, and holding trauma and tension in the body is likely a result of some energy stalls and blocks and things like that within the body. I won't go too deep on some of the stuff that I've gone into. I went to a master practitioner course a couple of years ago and was just like blown away with the stuff that these guys were doing. And a lot of it back then didn't really make sense to me, but I'm starting to kind of connect the dots now. But I've seen you guys, moving and squatting and things like that with your eyes closed. Can you talk to me about the process of that, what you're doing there, what your thoughts are on this ideology?
Yeah, so neurophysics therapy, it was founded by Ken Ware about 30 years ago, and now he's graciously put all of his knowledge down on paper so we can study it. And myself and Luke have just sort of finished our studies over the last 3 years. And neurophysics therapy is all about the brain and body, like you just said, being one. You cannot take one away from the other. What happens in one is happening in the other. And it's that whole thought creates biology thing that Einstein talked about all those years ago. So what we're doing with our eyes closed is we're essentially getting rid of any visual bias that we may be seeing, whether we're in the gym or whether we're in our home gym or wherever we are. And it puts us into our body so we can feel more readily what's going on in our system and what we might need to correct. Say we're doing a squat, are we feeling any asymmetries? So neurophysics is all about creating symmetry within the body. If you're doing a pec fly, you should be able to bring your arms across your body and join them seamlessly in the middle, in the center of your body. And that's just your proprioception. So a lot of the time you'll see people, if they close their eyes and they have to join their fingers in the center of their body, they'll be off to the side, or they'll be high, or they'll completely miss their fingers if they've got their eyes closed. And that's just where you are in space and time. So if you've got all these little incorrections in your body, then that's why if you go to take a step, you miss the step and fall and roll your ankle. That's what happens. You've got all these asymmetries within your body. So neurophysics is all about creating that symmetry again and getting the system, the body, and the mind to work as one again. Because a lot of the time in our high stress, bigger, badder, faster world, we've just created these disconnections with our body. And everything, our bodies can heal themselves. We just need to set the circumstances for it to be able to do that. And that is what neurophysics therapy is doing.
Yeah, I love that explanation. Thank you for sharing that. And that's something that, I touch on with my AMN work is that, we've got primarily three systems of the body feedback systems. We've got our visual system, which is our strongest by far system that provides us with sensory information to the brain, which then the brain processes and then creates an output through via movement primarily, and regulation of hormones and things like that. But then we've got our proprioceptive system. So when we close down our eyes, then our proprioceptive system has to upregulate, and we've got all these feedback sensors under our feet and in our hands and on our face and neck and armpits and things like that. And then we've got our vestibular system, which is, basically the inner ear, which tells our brain where our head is in space and like the angulations, accelerations, and things like that. And for the most part, people, literally go through their entire life working through the visual system. And when the visual system's doing all that work, then the proprioceptive system doesn't have to work as hard. The vestibular system doesn't have to work as hard. So, it intrigued me to see you guys doing the squats, one, barefoot, but also two, with your eyes closed. And I do a lot of hip airplanes and single leg work, some balance work, and I'll get people to close their eyes. You can get people to stand on one leg and then, they're fine. They can hold that. Tell them to close their eyes and they start swaying. They lose their balance and they're all over the place. And then people will, be uncomfortable being upside down because they don't have a great vestibular system, or, their proprioceptive system is switched off. So I think that's it's another level of awareness. I said I wasn't going to tell this story because it was pretty crazy, but I will tell this story. So I was doing my AMN level 1 practitioner a couple of years ago, and it was well above my head, and I was not understanding it. And I was fucking doing this course, and I was reading the same notes again and again and again and again. And I was doing all this research on the side, and it just wasn't sinking in. So I actually had an opportunity to go to a mastermind retreat in Thailand, in Chiang Mai. So most of the people were, level 3 practitioners, level 2 practitioners, level 1 practitioners. And I was still working through my level 1. And I was like, right, I need to go on this and, hopefully it can accelerate my learning. And I went away on this mastermind retreat, and the stuff that they were talking about was just blowing my mind. And I was like, the first day I was just like, oh man, what the fuck have I got myself into? This stuff is just, it's too out there. It's crazy. But then I was like, well, you've paid the money, you're doing this course, like open your mind up and, listen in and learn from these people who, are above you in their knowledge and experience with this system. And I remember I can't remember exactly what we were doing, but they were talking about like energy fields and things like that. And, you can heal people's nervous system by not touching them, manual therapy or anything like that. And I was like, this is pretty crazy. So anyway, I got involved, and the girl that I was working with, she had a car accident like when she was 14 or something, and the whole left side of her body was like under tension, was like tightened up, and had all this scar tissue and muscular imbalances and things like that. And before I did some treatment on her, I asked her to squat, and she drops down into a squat, and she's sitting in like a quarter squat position. And I'm like, can you go any deeper? And she's like, no, I can't go any deeper. I'm limited. I haven't been able to do a full squat for like 15 years. So anyway, I've gone through this process, this protocol that they taught us, and I like was doing some manual muscle testing and things like that. And basically I was asking her questions, and I was like, is this tension in the lower body? Is it in the upper body? Manual muscle testing that was telling me where to go. Is it on the left side? Is it on the right side? Is it above the ankle, below the ankle, blah, blah, blah. And then I was basically just asking all these questions. I wasn't saying these questions out loud. And how it was explained to me was my central nervous system, or my energy, was talking to her energy, and her energy was guiding me where to go and treat. And then I literally I was like, this is crazy. But anyway, I'm going to roll with it. And I basically put my hands above this area that her nervous system had told me to go to for like 90 seconds or whatever it told me to go to, did not touch her. And then afterwards, we called it calibrating, right? Back to Ken Ware's documentary. We'll come back to this in a moment. But basically, I asked her body if it was calibrated, and it said yes. And then I asked her to drop down into a squat, and she fucking dropped down, asked the ankles, and she looked at me like she'd seen a ghost. And I was like, my mind was blown. I was like, what the fuck? Didn't even touch her. And, all of a sudden she's dropped down into this really deep squat position. And up until that point, I was like, I've got no idea what this stuff is all about. Like, I couldn't get my head around. I was like, this is way too far out there. But I saw it with my own eyes, and I was just like, from then on, I was like, I'm a believer. This shit works.
Take my money.
Yeah. Did you have any experiences like that where, it was probably a little bit too far out there for you, and then, something happened, like a pivotal moment where you're like, oh man, this is incredible?
You mean with the neurophysics therapy stuff?
Yes.
Or just in general?
Let's go with the neurophysics first.
So neurophysics therapy is really interesting in the fact that, unlike any other therapy that's out there, whether it's physio or chiro or whatever, the onus is back on the patient, essentially, or the client. They do everything. So as a therapist, I am guiding them through the movement, whether it be a leg press or an adductor or a pec fly. I'm literally just putting their body in a position where they are open, so open gating, and able to take on stress in a way that doesn't close them off. And doesn't cause anxiety, and ways that we can see if there is any hidden anxiety. So neurophysics is really different in that sense, where it's very hands-on for the client, and it's on them, and it's hard for a lot of people to get their head around the fact that I, as a therapist, am not doing anything to them apart from guiding them. So that's a really big difference there within that. Within the higher disorder sort of clientele, whether it be paraplegics or motor neurons disease, or people, that haven't moved their arm or have had a stroke, or all those kind of things, Ken Ware does a tremor therapy, which he has done with me and Luke, where it's very hard to explain. It lets your system sort itself out. So it's almost like a shaking, and it allows the system to reorganize itself, and lets communication lines flow again, where they were blocked before. And again, that's all just you doing it as well. Ken's there guiding you through, but it's just you experiencing it for yourself, and then moving through it and feeling the effects of your system calibrating itself again, not recalibrating, because we're not going backwards, we're just calibrating and moving forwards. And that's another big thing with neurophysics, is it's never about going backwards. We're never trying to recreate, we're trying to create. We're never trying to rebuild, we're trying to build. So we can't physically, biology, you can't go backwards in biology, you can only move forwards. And that's a big premise within neurophysics as well.
Interesting. Very intriguing stuff. That sounds like, for me, I'm like, I want to know more about that stuff. But for most people listening back home, they're like, what the fuck are they talking about?
I just finished 3 years of study and I'm still like, what? So, and it's very, it seems very obvious stuff once you grasp it. But when you're studying it, it's just like, brain explosion. But, the more I practice in it for myself in my training, the more it makes a lot of sense as well.
Yeah. What's the biggest takeaway lesson from 3 years of study of this philosophy?
Slow down. So the initial few weeks of therapy in neurophysics is all slow movement, 5 to 6 seconds, eccentric, concentric, and allowing yourself time to feel what is happening in your body. So when we rush through movement, it's like putting a DVD and fast forward. You miss detail and you can't see what's happening and you don't get the storyline. So when you do that in your training and you're always rushing, your body isn't able to take in that high definition information. So the slower you go, the more information you're getting in. And the more your body can make sense of it, and the more neurons can fire, and the better feedback you can have in your own system. So I think the greatest lesson for me was, just after years of CrossFit as well as just like hammer time, was just to slow down, just take your foot off the gas a bit.
Yeah, that's an incredible answer. I love that. And that's something that I do a lot with my clients, is get them to slow down, because, our recruitment patterns, motor unit recruitment patterns, dictate how we move. If we want to squat or, lunge, deadlift, clean, whatever, our brain creates a blueprint for that movement. And, if we don't teach our body how to move correctly to begin with from that blank canvas, and you move like shit from the beginning, and then you add weight, you add load, you add time, you add speed, you add endurance, etc., like, you're just building strength upon dysfunction. And I think this is a problem that, a lot of people face. And this is where, injuries happen. This is where chronic injuries start building up, because you start creating these poor recruitment patterns, which then create a muscular imbalance, which then pull your joint into a bad position, which then inflames, the soft tissue, ligaments, tendons, bursa, articular cartilage, etc. And then all of a sudden, like, oh, my shoulder used to hurt every now and again when I do these exercises, but now it hurts all the time, and now I can't, go do anything overhead. Now I can't do X, Y, Z. And I think that's a really good point of, slowing things down, paying attention to how your body's working, and again, taking that feedback, so then your brain can process it and create an output. All right, I can feel when I'm dropping down into a squat, my left adductor's tight, my left glutes probably not firing as well as it could be. I might be hitting that bottom position, my hips are shifting across to the right. So as you slow down, you focus on those eccentrics, you're really targeting and creating a mind-muscle connection to connect to those muscles that should be working, so you can create that, that balance between left and right, and between upper body and lower body, and all that type of stuff. I think that's a really great takeaway from that. So I'm just wary of the time, Elise. I want to start winding the episode up. There's still so many things that I would like to dive into. There's so many questions that I have. But the name of this podcast is Live, Train, Perform. That stands for live life to the fullest, train to your potential, and perform at your best. What does that mantra mean for you?
I think the word potential there really stands out for me, and train to your potential. I think in the health and fitness world, a lot of people don't even try to step into fitness. A lot of people don't even get to that starting line because they don't think they have any potential in fitness, because they weren't athletic when they were kids, so they're not going to be athletic when they're an adult. And I think that's just so sad that they aren't able to see any potential to even start training, even start going. And I think a lot of that has to do with their surroundings and not having someone see potential in them. So maybe someone else comes along down the track if they change their environment a little bit and goes, hey, have you ever, like, you've got great quads, like, have you ever tried sprinting, or have things like that? And it takes someone else to see the potential in them. And I think if everyone just knew, if you have a body, you have potential to be fit, to be athletic. It's there if you've got a body. That's all you need. So often you underestimate yourself and you don't even start. But then once you start, you often surpass what you thought you could do. And then you're going way past your potential. And I've proved that to myself so many times, where I thought my potential was here at my shoulders. Well, it was actually way above my head. And then I showed myself that. And then I could keep going, okay, well, maybe I can go further. Maybe I can just keep going and going and going and reaching further and further. So I think train to your potential, but actually realize you have way more potential than you think you do, than anyone around you thinks you do. So that will move you into an incredible life. It will move you into living life to the fullest because you're doing all these exciting things. And I think it's just like your mantra is just this big circle that keeps feeding itself, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think, as you said, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if you have these self-limiting beliefs, then you're going to have these limits.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
if you can, set your mindset up to be able to challenge yourself and, get yourself out of the comfort zone, because there's no growth in comfort. You need to put yourself in uncomfortable positions and be able to deal with that, to build that resilience and put yourself under that stress so your body can adapt above and beyond, so it can deal with that stress better next time. I just want to finish off with, so if people are kind of in a little bit of a rut and they do have these self-limiting beliefs, or they don't quite have the right mindset that they would like to have to be the person that they want to be, do you have any resources that you could recommend to people, like any courses or books or podcasts, or any other resources that you could recommend other than following your Instagram page?
Do you know what? It's really interesting at the moment. I have really stepped away from sort of educational podcasts and self-help books and those kind of things, because I felt like it was all very in my face at the time. I felt like self-help was just sort of everywhere. And I was like, I can't handle this. So do you know what? I've actually just thought recently the best thing for my mental health has been reading just novels. I've just finished the Harry Potter series, and I read Where the Crawdads Sing and Boy Swallows Universe. And, it's just so nice for my mental health to just have this sort of fantasy break from everything. And it grounds you again. It makes you go, okay, life's not so serious. Like, Expelliarmus and whiz it away and just wave your wand. And I think a lot of people would really benefit from that at the moment, especially in the time that we're living. Everyone feels like they need to be sort of upgrading themselves and that kind of thing. But a lot of time it's nice to just sit on the beanbag and read Harry Potter and, not feel bad about it.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I mean, you did talk about upgrading yourself, and that is a form of upgrading yourself, right? You're taking a little bit of a break from the self-help stuff and the study and things like that, and just grounding yourself and being present. Going back to minimalism again, like that all ties in for me. Like, you're minimizing the shit in your life. You're not worrying about, all of these other things. I'm sure you're kind of similar to me. I don't watch the news or listen to the radio or anything like that. And, I might have a couple of websites that I might go on to once or twice a week just to have a look at things that interest me. But, I live a pretty minimalistic life as well. And what you just explained there that's amazing. And that's a great place to be in your life.
Yeah, and just be okay with having me time and not feeling like you need to apologize for it.
Yeah. That's it. That's incredible. I do have so many more questions, but unfortunately, I'm going to have to call it there. But I'm definitely keen on getting you back on again in the future. Initially, for those listening at home, I did want to get Elise and Luke on together, but they're both incredible people with amazing stories in their own right. So I did want to get them on individually to tell those stories. So Elise, thank you very much for being a guest on the Live, Train, Perform podcast. We definitely need to do this again soon.
Thanks for having me, man.
My pleasure.